Yeah, so warranted, yes. Look, there are some tech companies that benefited tremendously from the pandemic, like Amazon, like Zoom. But overall, the tech sector these days is so big that it's pretty indicative of the economy overall. And in the U.S., with 50 million people filing for unemployment insurance and benefits, clearly that eventually catches up with all the companies that are selling services or products to those people as well. And so, yeah, it was warranted. Have we hit the bottom of it? I mean, to me, that's really a question that's dependent on vaccine timing, right? If news came out today that we wouldn't see anything for another year, then no, I don't think we're close to the bottom of it. But if some of the more optimistic projections are right, then yeah, we can be.
So that's interesting. Do you think these big tech stocks are positively correlated with economic news, i.e. good economic news is good for those stocks, as opposed to there being any sort of work from home premium in some of these stocks?
I think a couple of them do benefit from a work from home premium. And so there are a handful, I think telemedicine companies clearly fit into that, just like the Zooms of the world. But overall, yeah, I mean, simply because, so much of our economy these days, is comprised of tech companies one way or another. I mean, you could think about it in a way, really almost every single company uses technology in some way. So like this napkin that I'm holding, whatever company made it used technology to manufacture it, distribute it, produce it, advertise it. So ultimately, the two are too intertwined for there not to be a correlation.
What do you think all of this volatility has meant for the IPO market, Bradley? Next week, we're going to get a big test with Snowflake and Unity. What are you hearing in the Valley about those conversations around going public right now?
Look, I think people are overall excited. I think one of the lessons of some tech IPOs over the last couple of years is that a lot of companies stayed private for too long, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, and ultimately ended up at lower valuations than people had anticipated. And they probably would have made more money and done better if they had gone out earlier. So I think that given that, now that a bunch of IPOs are actually happening, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for it. It'll depend, ultimately for any tech company, as Wilfred said, that really can make a claim to the work at home market in any way, they're going to do well, just like Peloton, did well at one point for that. On the flip side, if you're just a general tech company, ultimately you're probably correlated with everything else.
The fact that we've suddenly got a slew of these tech IPOs coming, do you take that as a positive sign overall, or a sign that the market's pretty rich and they're seizing an opportunity of an overpriced tech market?
No, I do think I think it's positive in part because as a venture capitalist, to me, the changing in norms within Silicon Valley of when to IPO is really important, right? I want my portfolio companies to IPO sooner rather than later. So, for example, we're investors in a company called Lemonade. They had their IPO a couple of months ago. They've only been in business for a few years. I really like that trend rather than, I was an Uber, waiting 10 years before there was any sort of liquidity. And so overall, it's the right mentality. Whether or not people are just taking advantage of the top of the market, we'll see. But it's a good trend.
Does it have to be a stay-at-home or pandemic winner to kind of business model to go public right now?
No, not at all. So Lemonade's a good example. They're an insurance company and not specific really to COVID in any particular way. So no, you certainly don't have to be. I think if you're the opposite of it, so like when Airbnb has their listing, that's a problem, right? If people still can't travel and that entire industry is shut down, it's a tough pitch to make to say, hey, buy my stock. Yeah, we can barely even operate these days, but maybe one day it'll be okay. So there's definitely a group of companies that maybe need to wait or are going to have real problems because they rely on sectors of the economy that are pretty paralyzed by COVID. But if you're just a run-of-the-mill tech company that's neither involved in kind of COVID activities one way or the other, probably fine.